So before I start this video, I just want to preface this by saying it's not a Tyson Fury hate video. It's just, as with every celebrity, they have their deranged, psychotic fans who think they can't do anything wrong, and Tyson Fury has many of them. The reason I'm making this video is because I've seen those same deranged views spill over into the mainstream to the point that boxing analysts have actually bought into the hype that Tyson Fury has basically maximally developed everything in his game and that he is completely untouchable. Now, if Tyson Fury goes on to beat Alexander Usyk and retires, I have no problem with that. If Tyson Fury beats Usyk, beats Joshua, and then beats another two in the top 5, I'll be rating him as the best of this era, undoubtedly. If Tyson Fury were to fight anyone in history, Muhammad Ali, Lennox Lewis, you name them, he would at least give them a good fight. And I feel actually a lot of the people, I feel Tyson Fury would have beaten Muhammad Ali. I don't think he'd have beat Lennox Lewis, but it's irrelevant because I don't have a time machine. As a general rule, when every fighter has at least one weakness, and when you hear fans speak about a fighter as though he has no weaknesses, they have gone into the realm of psychotic fanboy. As an example of this, when I was in school, I was 14, when I was 13 years old, my friend started talking about Manny Pacquiao because he had beaten Miguel Cotto. This is back in 2009, and he was insistent that Manny Pacquiao had won and unified every single division in boxing, including heavyweights, had moved back down to welterweight, had never lost, had won every single fight by knockout, and that the YouTube videos of him getting knocked out by body shots were made in Photoshop. This is how insane this guy was. When I showed him his box rec, and I said, look, he's got a great record, but look, 13 guys have gone the distance or whatever it was, and he hadn't knocked every single fighter out cold. No, TKO, total knockout. No, it means technical knockout. This is how insane some people are. And luckily I haven't actually come across anyone like that with Tyson Fury. But the mainstream view seems to just be that he's completely untouchable, and Alexander Usyk doesn't stand a chance. No point in him fighting Anthony Joshua because he has a loss, and Fury has maximally developed every area of his game. So I'm going to go over Tyson Fury's resume with a very critical eye here. I'm going to be extremely harsh, but everybody needs a critic at the end of the day. Anthony Joshua seems to be getting a lot of stick because they think he surrounds himself with yes men, but then if you criticise their darling Tyson Fury, you're a hater and you don't know shit about boxing, and that's it. Another thing, if I could have a fraction of Tyson Fury's success in any endeavour in life, a fraction of his money, I would be a very happy man. He's done very well for himself, and he deserves a lot of respect for what he has achieved. But he is a perpetual liar, and as a result, there's a lot of false narratives going around about him. So I've got a little list. Let's start with top of the agenda. Tyson Fury's defence. People seem to think this man is a complete defensive wizard. He cannot be touched. Tyson Fury has a very good defence, especially for a man of his size. He's very mobile, especially for the fact that he now weighs the better part of 300 pounds. But you cannot have it both ways. Alright? He's either a defensive genius who never gets hit, or he was completely lit up by Otto Wallin just a few short years ago whilst playing a defensive game plan. Which one is it? Otto Wallin is not a particularly good fighter. Okay? People talk about Tyson Fury having an incredible chin because he's been dropped a bunch of times. If he's such a defensive wizard, why was he dropped a bunch of times? Why were people like Steve Cunningham and Nevin Pikage putting him on his arse? Why was the one-trick pony in Deontay Wilder, who is a very good fighter, but why was he able to catch him 4 times with a shot to put him down? It doesn't make any sense. Tyson Fury has a good defense when he fights mobile fighters like Steve Cunningham and Otto Wallin, who are nowhere near as good as Alexander Usyk. His defense failed him because they were able to get in and out of range and change angles on him. Okay? Let's get to the next one, that he is this mentally strong, just unbreakable character. The big story around Tyson Fury for the last 5 years has been because he mentally crashed, basically. He just went nuts, put on a load of weight, was doing a load of drugs, drinking a ton of alcohol, and then he came back. And he's this mentally unbreakable character. Why did he do that in the first place? Seriously, why did he do it? Another thing, his fight against Vladimir Klitschko. He said in his corner, I'm afraid of getting caught by his left hook. That's why he didn't want to throw more shots. If he's a mentally unbreakable character, why was he afraid of it? If he's this mentally unbreakable character who doesn't feel any stress, why did he cry after the Vladimir Klitschko fight and the second John McDermott fight? You cannot have it both ways. Tyson Fury is very mentally strong, and you develop mental strength as you go along in life. I'm not judging Tyson Fury for losing his head at the age of, I think it was 26 or 27 when he won the world title. So like I said, I'm not judging Tyson Fury for having a mental breakdown after winning the world title when he was in his mid to late 20s, after he's basically spent his entire childhood working towards that goal, when his dad's just come out of prison and his dad, who's a mentally erratic character, is now back involved in his life, when he's had family members die. But you cannot have it, as I keep saying, both ways. He's either a mentally unshakable character or he had a 5-year meltdown. Okay? Next thing, he will fight anybody. Why on earth then did Anthony Joshua fight for a world title in his 16th fight and fight Vladimir Klitschko in his 19th fight? Let's just check this quickly. Who did Tyson Fury fight in his 19th fight? In his 19th fight, Tyson Fury fought a man called Vinny Medalone, who had previously lost to Jean-Marc Mormec and Thomas Adamek. This was after Jean-Marc Mormec had been knocked out by David Haye in the cruiserweight division, and Thomas Adamek, who is a previous light heavyweight. Fury likes to call Usyk a blown-up middleweight, yet he's happy to fight in his 19th fight, the same time Anthony Joshua was fighting Vladimir Klitschko. He's willing to fight the previous losing opponent of a former light heavyweight. Next thing, if he's this ultimate fighting man who will just fight absolutely anybody, then why did he fight Tom Schwartz and Thomas Wallin? What was the point in that? What did he learn? We know why he took that fight, because he was almost knocked out by Deontay Wilder and he wanted time to physically and mentally recover. He has stated this. He said after that first fight with Wilder, he didn't do any head sparring for 6 months. He needed to neurologically recover. And so he fought an easy touch in Tom Schwartz, and that's absolutely fine. But you cannot have it both ways. He cannot be this ultimate fighting man who will fight anybody, fight the best back to back to back, and then he fights a good fight, 2 crap fighters, a good fighter, and this is how he's always carried out his career. He said when he first turned pro, the reason he didn't sign with Eddie Hearn is that he was rushing him into an Anthony Joshua fight, into good opposition, which is fair enough, because he would have been rushed into the Anthony Joshua fight. He probably wouldn't have been ready after 3 fights. Hearn wanted him to fight Bellew, then White, then Joshua. Instead, he fought Sefer Safiri, who's just... Look, I don't like to call fighters garbage and all this kind of stuff. I think I've done it a few times in this video. But Sefer Safiri is a ridiculous opponent. It's just ridiculous. Was it Pianetta after that? And then he fought Deontay Wilder. Okay, fair enough. But he did not want to fight Anthony Joshua after just 3 fights. But he was willing to fight Deontay Wilder. But he said Deontay Wilder is the best in the division. You're saying you're rushing me into good opposition, Eddie Hearn. That's why I'm not going to sign with you. Oh, but I'll fight Deontay Wilder in the same time period. And Deontay Wilder's the most dangerous man in history. It doesn't make sense. It is perpetual lying. The next thing. And by the way, Tyson Fury is obviously mentally strong and he's got a good resume. There is nothing wrong with fighting easier fights between tough fights. It's just when you have these delusional people who think he has just sought the best opposition whenever it comes to him. It's just not true. He didn't exactly try his hardest to get the David Price fight on. I mean, it's hard to say who ducked who in that position, in that situation, but given Tyson Fury's history, do we really believe that he definitely didn't duck David Price? I mean, come on. Next thing, that he's the money man in the division. It should be simple for you. No, he isn't. He is not. The Deontay Wilder trilogy seems to have made a loss. He made a lot of money fighting Dillian Whyte, who was already a pay-per-view fighter, and Dillian Whyte's stock had risen because he had fought Anthony Joshua a few years previously. I just don't I don't understand it, and this is coming from the guy as well who says he'll fight for free, but he wants Alexander Usyk. He wants $500 million for the Usyk fight, and that he'd fight Anthony Joshua for free. Personally, I don't believe that. I think he will fight Usyk and Joshua. I think he will fight Usyk and Joshua. It's just perpetual lies, and it's coming from him that he's the money man, that he'll fight for free, but he needs all this money to fight. If it wasn't for the facts that so many people just seem to lap this up and not actually know their arse from their elbow in this situation, I wouldn't have mentioned this. It's the most ridiculous one on this list, to be honest with you. But there we have it. Tyson Fury likes money, he earns a good amount, but he is not the money man in the division. Next, that he has this unbelievable punching power because he knocked out Deontay Wilder and Dillian Whyte. Well, it was always rumoured that Deontay Wilder was chinny. It was always rumoured that Deontay Wilder was chinny. Deontay Wilder was champion for 4 years. Well, he was champion for longer, but by the time Anthony Joshua had fought Deontay Wilder, by the time Joshua fought Klitschko, by the time Anthony Joshua fought Vladimir Klitschko, Deontay Wilder had been champion for 4 years. Deontay Wilder's manager, Shelley Finkel, said, "We're not going to be rushed into the Klitschko fight. Deontay Wilder's a prospect." It's been long suspected the reason Deontay Wilder never fought Vladimir Klitschko is because Vladimir Klitschko was rumoured to have bashed him up in sparring endlessly with 18-ounce gloves on. It's been rumoured for years that Deontay Wilder is chinny. There's video evidence of him getting schooled by Filip Hrgovic in sparring. So why is Tyson Fury getting this credit for being this murderous puncher when he couldn't keep Deontay Wilder down in the second fight, and it took Deontay Wilder being bashed up for 11 rounds before he was knocked out in the second fight, and he's meant to be chinny anyway, and Deontay Wilder has always been a top heavyweight, as in he's got a massive upper body and tiny legs. That's not going to help your chin. That's not going to help your powers of recovery. I'm sorry, and that he knocked out Dillian Whyte with one punch. Well, look at the uppercut Anthony Joshua hit Dillian Whyte with. Dillian Whyte didn't get up. Look at the uppercut Povetkin knocked him out with. Dillian Whyte did not get up, but he got up against Tyson Fury after he'd been knocked out twice, after he'd been dropped and hurt in basically every major fight he'd had. This is another thing actually about Tyson Fury fighting anybody. He said, "I'll fight Dillian Whyte just for a title in for the fight." This was after Fury's first fight with Deontay Wilder. WBC offered some sort of belt, and he completely ignored it. Dillian Whyte then gets knocked out cold by Alexander Povetkin, avenges him in the rematch, and then Tyson Fury is willing to fight Dillian Whyte. He's somebody who likes to see some form of weakness in his opponents before he fights them, very much like Mayweather did. Next one, Tyson Fury has an incredible chin. Again, it was said for years that Tyson Fury was chinny. I didn't think he was chinny. He hasn't got a great chin, but he's got a decent chin. But people thought he was chinny for years because he was dropped by journeymen and a guy who had a 30% knockout ratio at cruiserweight in Steve Cunningham. It was said before the Vladimir Klitschko fight, Tyson Fury is going to get knocked out because he has no chin. Before the first and second Deontay Wilder fight, he was meant to get knocked out because people thought he had no chin. I mean, it's ridiculous. People, Tyson Fury gets dropped a bunch of times early in his career by non-punchers and literally light heavyweights / cruiserweights, and he's got no chin. He then gets in the ring with Deontay Wilder, gets dropped twice, and suddenly that supports him having a good chin. No, it doesn't. It supports him not having a good chin. I've never heard such absurdity, such an absurd claim in my life. It's just ridiculous. How does getting dropped make you have a good chin? It doesn't. Okay? Tyson Fury doesn't have a terrible chin, but it's not the best, okay? It's not this unbreakable chin that only Deontay Wilder can crack. Trust me, Anthony Joshua has the power to knock him out, Usyk has the power to buzz him, and you're not going to like this, if Tyson Fury is caught off balance and he is tired, Alexander Usyk can knock him out. Do I think it would happen? No. But Usyk is a 6'4", 100-kilo man. If he catches anyone properly, especially if it's on the neck or on the ear, he will burst their eardrum, their equilibrium will go, and they will not get up. Okay? Next thing, Tyson Fury has unbelievable stamina. Tyson Fury does have good stamina. I have to give it to him. He's got good stamina. He can keep up a good work rate. He can keep pressure on people. He can move around very elegantly, and he can keep that up for 12 rounds. But early in his career, he was known for gassing out late in fights because he wasn't always in good condition. But Fury's meant to have incredible stamina, yet... Okay, so he's got incredible stamina, yet he's never thrown anywhere near as many punches as Usyk threw in the second Anthony Joshua fight. Usyk threw nearly 800 punches. Are you sure that Usyk does not have the stamina advantage? He moved around beautifully in that fight for the full 12 rounds, constantly moving his head, changing angles, and he threw a ton of punches. Coming up to the 6th round, I believe Anthony Joshua had thrown more, and they had landed about the same. And this is just according to CompuBox. It's hard to say how many had landed, but thrown, CompuBox is usually quite accurate. Then Alexander Usyk, in the second half of the fight, threw something like, I think it was like 400 punches. That is a lot of punches to throw in 6 rounds if you weigh 100 kilos and he's throwing it against the bigger man, a man who's known for having an extremely good offense. Okay, so this idea that Tyson Fury just has all the advantages if he fights Alexander Usyk is ridiculous. Next one, powers of recovery. Tyson Fury seems to have good powers of recovery, I have to give it to him, but let's look at fights where he's been dropped, and let's look at the Steve Cunningham fight. The reason he got dropped, he got up, and then he fought very close to outside of the rules. He was leaning on his head, and the referee wasn't taking points off. He grabbed him excessively in that fight, okay? And Cunningham was known as a guy who gasses out. So if you're looking at that fight, well, it kind of makes sense that Tyson Fury outlasted Cunningham and took him out later on in the fight. And fair enough, that's what he did. But Cunningham was never known for having good stamina or good power. No one thought he could drop Tyson Fury. But Tyson Fury's got insane levels of recovery because of that fight. Okay, fine. Let's look at the first Deontay Wilder fight. Tyson Fury got up, and he did what you're supposed to do when you're hurt. You lean on the guy. Now, is it really an overwhelming shock to everybody that he was able to get on top of Deontay Wilder, who has no leg strength, cannot move on the back foot, and cannot fight on the inside? If you've got the bigger man leaning on you and you cannot move around like someone like Usyk, you can't fight on the inside, and your legs are so disproportionately small to your upper body, what did you expect? What did you expect to happen? Of course, Tyson Fury drained him. And then you look at the third fight where Tyson Fury was dropped twice in the second round. Upon that second knockdown, tell me that Tyson Fury did not look like he wanted to quit. To me, it looked like he gone, Christ, I can't get back into the fight easily, it's going to be a slog. He looked ready to quit in that fight. I'm not saying he would have, but I mean, it's something you have to consider. Everybody can quit. And usually at heavyweight, at some point, all these great guys who fight everybody, at some point they usually quit. Evander Holyfield quit. Muhammad Ali quit. I believe Larry Holmes did, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, on to the next point. This is the last one. That he just leaves it all in the ring, that he won't let himself get outboxed like Anthony Joshua did against Usyk. He would leave it all in the ring. He would get knocked out. He'd rather get knocked out than lose on points. I'll leave you with this. Watch the first John McDermott fight and tell me that Tyson Fury deserved to win the fight. He didn't. He lost the fight, and now Tyson Fury is a much better fighter. He takes boxing much more seriously now. John McDermott deserved to win that fight. Tyson Fury did try to win the fight, but he let that fight get away from him. He didn't get knocked out. He didn't say, you know what, never say die, I'd rather get knocked out than win. No. He still had something left to give in that fight, and he did not give it against John McDermott, of all people. No disrespect to John McDermott, he seems like a good guy, he'd kick my ass, but he is not on the level of Anthony Joshua, Alexander Usyk, Filip Hrgovic, I forget how to say his first name, but Zhang, the Chinese guy who arguably beat Hrgovic. John McDermott is not on that level in terms of heart, physical ability, or anything. So what we have here with Tyson Fury is a very good and very well-rounded fighter, but somebody who has a lot of weaknesses that the top 5 guys can exploit. And this is typical in a good era of boxing, particularly heavyweight boxing. They're all vulnerable. I watched that second Usyk-Joshua fight. I saw weaknesses in Alexander Usyk. I saw them in Anthony Joshua. I saw them in Anthony Joshua when he beat Vladimir Klitschko, when he beat Povetkin. This is just standard. It takes a guy to turn up on a good night and a guy to turn up on a bad night, and there's a heavyweight upset. We saw that in the first Joshua-Ruiz fight. We saw it in the second one. Ruiz wasn't having a good night. He looked dreadful, and Anthony Joshua was having a good night. Okay, this is boxing, it happens. Another thing about him fighting anybody, just before I close this out, and why didn't he fight Vladimir Klitschko again? Oh, well, he had the mental breakdown. This is the reality. He was banned for using anabolic steroids and cocaine. That's why. That's why it didn't happen. Now, I don't have a problem with... I don't have a problem with athletes using drugs because they all use drugs. I don't have a problem with it. I have more of a problem with the World Anti-Doping Agency charging them money, knowing that their testing doesn't work, and that it forces them to use drugs that have no clinical studies on them, that have been brewed in someone's backyard. Because if you get a chemist, they can make things that get around the testing. I don't judge Tyson Fury for that, but the reality is he used an androlone and he got banned. And look at the 12th round against Vladimir Klitschko. Klitschko, when he went for it, was able to hit Tyson Fury. I think the rematch would have been very interesting. Vladimir Klitschko carried that frustration into the Anthony Joshua fight, and people hate on Anthony Joshua for getting hit. Well, yeah, he got hit more than Tyson Fury, but guess what? He landed a lot more as well. So, I'm just going to close that out. This is just sort of my little rant about just deluded people thinking that Tyson Fury has it all, he can't do anything wrong. At the end of the day, he's very well rounded, but he's got a lot of weaknesses, just as I have, just as you have, just as everyone has, okay? So, tell me what you think about it. If you hate this video, if you think that I'm, piece of crap because I actually criticised Tyson Fury, well then, just go away. Actually, no, keep commenting, I'll probably wind you up. Anyway, thank you.